So for those of you that have just joined us, we've realised that whilst you hopefully can see us, we can't see you, but that's okay as long as we're able to hear you. Let me formally start the session now. So welcome everyone to our session today on looking at ways in which we can support our carers, so employees who are also carers in the workplace. So my name is Helen Letchfield. I'm the co-founder of P&P, which stands for Parent and Professional. We're a coaching organisation and we support parents and carers at work to get a better work and family balance, but also to enable people to get sustainable and fulfilling careers as well. So I recognise a few names, so it's great to see those of you who I know. Other names that I don't recognise, it's great that you've been able to join us today. So we are recording the session. The recording will be available afterwards. Couple of things, I suppose, just like introducing the whole theme of carers and thinking about the reasons why I'm here, other than to facilitate the panel discussion today. I think first of all, professionally, knowing that there are 3.7 million employees in England and Wales who are continuously and daily juggling work and caring commitments. 28%, this was according to a recent CIPD study, 28% of full-time employees are actually spending 30 hours, up to 30 hours per week, caring for individuals. And that equates to 700,000 employees and individuals who are actually striving to balance the equivalent of 2 full-time jobs. So it is massive, and we know lots of organisations are starting to recognise and support carers now, which is brilliant. But our role today is really to talk about what more can we do, and for those people who haven't yet started to support carers at work, how can we start? And hopefully we can give you some ideas about how to do that. The other reason why we're here today is because Carers Week is coming up. So you're probably aware, 10th to 16th of June. The theme this year for Carers Week is putting carers on the map, which I love because it's acknowledging all the invaluable contributions that carers make. And if you go on the Carers Week UK website, you can actually put yourself, if you're a carer or if you're an organisation supporting carers, you can put it on their virtual map. The third reason why I'm here, I guess, is more on a personal level, because I recently realised just how hard it is being a carer and a full-time employee as well. So actually caring for somebody, my partner's mum has got advanced dementia, and it's had a massive impact on work and life balance, really. Completely took me unawares. So that's the other reason why I'm here, really, because it's really hit home on a personal level. So that's a little bit about me. The session today, we're just going to run through 3 key questions, and I'll share those in a second. And I'm going to introduce the 3 members of our panel now, because they're going to be doing most of the talking, I guess, but obviously with contributions, hopefully, from all of you as well. So Ruth, shall we start with your intro?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Ruth Harrison-Swift. I'm a business and life coach and NLP practitioner, but I specialise in transitions. So predominantly parental transition, working with Helen and team, with carers and with neurodiversity, specifically parents or partners of people with neurodiversity. It's a different viewpoint from coaching people with a neurodiversity. And not that I don't have clients who are neurodiverse, I do, but I like to cover it from the caring aspect as well, because it's not really looked at as much as it should be. And I think what we're talking about today, that needs to be incorporated into the subject of carers, that it shouldn't just be the picture of perhaps somebody who's elderly. There's a lot of other caring going on as well. It's a lot quieter. So that's where I'm sort of waving the flag for the other aspects of caring. I am the parent of 2 neurodiverse children. One in particular is more difficult than the other. And I'm also a carer to an elderly friend. So, and my partner is caring for a number of people in his family as well. So it's the carer theme is having a massive impact on our life. So we just keep our chin up and look for all of the ways that we can help other people cope and help ourselves to get through it as well.
Thank you, Ruth. Alison, shall we come to you next?
Yeah, hello everybody. So I'm Alison Yard. I'm an associate certified coach of the ICF, and my focus is coaching new and also more established women leaders. My real passion is coaching those women that are also family carers, and that's because I was a carer for myself for many years of my dad. I was also working full-time in a demanding role as a director in a real estate investment management business. So I'm very passionate about doing what I can to help.
Great, thanks, Alison. So as you can see, we sort of we pulled together the panel based on sort of background and coaching experience, and also our desire and passion in this area. Georgina.
Oh, thanks, Helen. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. I'm Georgina. I run a coaching business called Walk With Me, and that's because I coach outside on walks in nature, and I find it leads to much better outcomes for people. I tend to work with women, I sort of call them at a stage of peak responsibility in midlife. So the caring for young children, some with additional needs, the caring for sick, elderly parents, the working is in there, and all the other demands that happen in midlife. I'm part of a big network of working mothers, one of the coaches we're pouring into motherhood, and I've tapped into that network for some of the insights for today. And also my own experience of my mum being ill, losing her, caring for my dad while having very young children, and it was COVID and I was working, so I have that as well.
Thank you, Georgina. So I think what the best thing to do is really get stuck into the sort of 3 questions that we want to discuss today. We've probably got about sort of 15 minutes or so per question. And the first one is really thinking about the challenges faced by working carers. And obviously we've talked about 2 types of carers so far. We've talked about carers of people who have got neurodiverse needs. We've also talked about carers of elderly or sick relatives. So we're covering both of those in our thinking today. But the reason why I always think it's so useful to actually outline the challenges faced by working carers is because a lot of organisations don't yet know who their carers are. And I think that's a key thing. So we need to, first things first, start understanding who in our organisations is struggling, and maybe start to get the ball rolling by having those conversations to start identifying those people and really acknowledging, yes, we know that you're out there and it's okay to start talking about some of the difficulties you're facing. And we found that the best way to do that is actually start sharing challenges. So knowing what we know as a community, what are we seeing and what are we hearing? What are some of the challenges that we're all, I suppose, faced with personally, but professionally as well. So I'm going to start by asking the three panelists to share their thoughts, and then I'm going to sort of throw it out to everyone that we've got here today, really. I'd love to hear from you, what are you seeing and hearing about carers' challenges? So Alison, maybe we could start with you. What sort of things are you seeing as the main challenges?
I'd just like to say that at the start, unlike Ruth, my experience to date in terms of my own caring responsibilities and those that I coach have been that coaching elderly or looking after elderly parents. And there are a lot of common themes and common challenges, as you can imagine. But nonetheless, I think one of the big issues, one of the challenges is a feeling of isolation and loneliness. And time, obviously, time is so constrained. There's not enough hours in the day, and it's very unpredictable. The need for flexibility is great. I mean, I've had phone calls from people in the middle of the night saying my father's falling on and he's on the way to hospital. So that unpredictability causes overwhelm and feelings of helplessness, which of course can lead to guilt. There's a lot of internalization going on.
Thank you, Alison. Yeah, so some of the things, isolation, I mean, that's massive, isn't it? Because we're all sort of trying to create teams, especially at work, where people do feel connected. So I think that the worry that people feel isolated because they can't, for one reason or another, connect with or share with their experiences at work, it can lead to isolation. I think as well, since we've been working at home, that hasn't helped either, has it? Because a lot of it's great the respect that we get the flexibility to be a carer, but at the same time, if the only person you're seeing day in, day out is the person you're caring for, and if they're in difficulties themselves, and then you're just dialing in, it's very, very difficult, and it can cause a lot of isolation.
I'm picking up on something else you said there, Alison. The unexpected and unpredictable unknowns. There's lots of uns there, but we can't predict that somebody's going to have a fall. we can't predict what the fallout of that is going to be.
No.
And we don't know how that's going to impact our sleep, our day at work, how it's going to impact the rest of the family.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it just builds on the challenges, doesn't it?
Most definitely, yes. Yes, Ruth.
And I think the practical challenges lead to the emotional challenges, right? That, you know, the unpredictability, or I've heard from women who are sort of fighting the system to get for children with additional needs to get the diagnosis or to get the EHC plan in place. It's long, it's time consuming, but it's also, they talked about it being quite an emotionally traumatic process. They feel quite hurt and alone in that experience of other people not understanding what it's like to go through that. So that real connection between the two, and also the complexity of childcare. As someone with 2 young children at primary school, it's hard enough working out what to do. There's the wraparound care and the holidays. They don't have additional needs. When you've got that as another layer to deal with, when the specialist schools don't necessarily offer the holiday clubs that are available to children without those needs, or the wraparound childcare, you've got to be at home to pick them up and collect them from those things. So it seems so interconnected to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the EHCP side of things from a neurodiversity perspective is a lot of parents, you'll have come across this too, Georgina, a lot of parents feel like their thoughts and their feelings aren't being recognised. So they're not just being a parent, it's the extra gift that comes with that, with the neurodiversity. And it may not be just the child, it may be the partner as well. It's deemed to be genetic at the moment from research. So you know, it might be that there's more going on for one person who's working, that they might be coming home and dealing with a part of caring for a partner and a child or 2 or 3 with a neurodiversity or with an illness. So one of the things that, again, I think we've all come across is the masking that people do. They go to work, they want to make life look like it's normal, that everything's fine, and so they mask. And that's exhausting in itself. So that adding on another layer of tiredness, and that's tiredness is something we talked about, didn't we? With, I think people sometimes don't recognize that they're tired, not just because they're constantly busy, but it's this emotional tiredness that is wrapped up in everything that's going on for them. It's just exhausting. And so the sleep they're getting probably isn't as much as they need, or as good quality as they need.
I've heard clients talk about the sort of emotional hangover when you've had a really full-on weekend and you come into work, but you're still holding all of that emotion and you're trying not to let it show, but it affects how you're able to show up, affects your productivity, your focus, all of that.
It's funny, isn't it? Because some people have also said, you know, just looking at the other side of it, that actually, if you've been caring for somebody over a weekend or on an evening, for example, actually going back to work can actually make people feel relieved, because they've you know, got into that professional setting. They can be their professional selves. It actually can, on the plus side, give them a break from their role as a carer. Obviously that's the best case scenario, because I think what we're all saying is that you can't very easily leave one role behind and then suddenly step into the other without feeling, like you said, Georgina, that hangover effect, that emotional hangover. Because you just can't do that as a human being. You can't leave behind things that easily. And just picking up on what you were saying around it being emotionally traumatic, and that's something that I think has really hit home for me, because, you know, having been a parent and, you know, for 20 odd years, I just assumed that parenting, you know, is challenging, can be hard, it can be emotional, can be physical, etc., can be hard. But I think what I didn't realise was that when you're caring for somebody with advanced dementia, so an elderly person, that it is traumatic, because, you know, there is no solution, there's no happy ending here. So for the first time, I really understood what carers meant when they said it's emotionally traumatic, because, you know, it's not a happy ending, is it? Something that I think, you know, took me unawares.
Very true.
Yeah. And I think if I could mention resilience as well, that, you know, I know that resilience is the balance between stress and recovery, and resilience is the ability to bounce back. But when you've got more stress and not enough recovery time, then that's when you're at risk of sort of burning out. And that sort of, I like the framing of work sometimes can be the recovery time. it can be the escapism and the structure and the financial means, the thing that provides that support, but it's knowing which bits of the work, because sometimes it's not all the bits of work that are recovery time.
Yeah.
But I think sort of helping, and it's sometimes when you're in it, it's so hard to see it. But other people can see it for us sometimes in a much easier way.
You're right. It can be a very valuable distraction if you could even go into the office for an hour or two. And even that, the sort of ticking off the to-do list can be rewarding. It can just get you away for a little while from the caring responsibilities. Yeah.
So what I'd like to do, as we've hopefully got the ball rolling and started some inspiration and some brainstorming about some of the challenges, is open up to everyone today. So either if you could use whichever box has been enabled, the Q&A or the chat box, and just share a couple of thoughts around some of the challenges that you're seeing or that you're experiencing yourself. Or of course, we'd absolutely love it if you can take yourself off mute and share some of the challenges that you're seeing and hearing as well. Brian, you've got your hand up.
Well, thank you. Just going based on what Ruth was saying, we go to work, but we don't want to bring our problems to work. So in work, it can be an escape. So we end up masking, which is, one thing. And so we go to work and it's an escape. But the one thing I feel is like you need a friend, whether it's your partner or just a friend that you can call, that you can share what's going on. And, you just want to be able to almost dump, because things change all the time. And then another thing, like Ruth said, when my father just fell like 2 weeks ago. So now that I'm here, he wakes up at 1 o'clock in the morning in pain. So you help him get through that, give him some medication. But now I'm up for the rest of the night. You know what I mean? So like, you get tired and you may have to take naps during the day. So life changes in a way you don't even see it coming. Yeah. That's the uniqueness of it. So yeah, it's not like there's any answers out there, but I think when people share, that's when you realize, oh, okay, you can learn from one another.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, completely. Finding somebody, a friend, somebody that you can talk to in confidence it helps massively, especially if you've got, a colleague, trusted colleague at work, so that you've got when you're at work and as your professional self, you've got someone to confide in. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Emily.
Hi, sorry, I didn't realise I was on mute.
Okay.
So I'll just quickly give a bit of background information to me. So I'm the Reward and Benefits Manager at Imperial College. Thank you, Helen, for inviting me to this today. Just from a personal perspective, I'm not currently a carer at this particular moment in time, but I've had those responsibilities over the last few years, and that just sort of pertains to parents not getting any younger, bless them, and certain health conditions come in at certain times. And while all is okay at the moment, my siblings and I are pragmatic and realistic about things potentially coming up in the not so distant future. And I'm very privileged and lucky that I've always had very understanding managers and employers who have facilitated that flexibility if I've needed to take time off to go to hospital appointment or various things like that. But just steering it now towards our sort of the professional sphere, and it's probably just echoing a lot of what has been said already, but we are at the moment reviewing our internal sort of provisions and support that we can offer staff in our organisation that identify as carers. We're still trying to bridge the gap between those that are parents and naturally have sort of lots of policies that are geared towards them if they need time off or naturally family leave, things like that, and perhaps some managers that probably still need to be a little bit challenged sometimes on appreciating that not all care and responsibilities are related to childcare. People have got a multitude of things going on in their personal lives, so sometimes I think as an organisation we're definitely on the right trajectory, and for the most part our employees are very lucky with getting that flexibility, but sometimes in the minority of cases it falls down to the luck of your manager as well, and there's definitely support and guidance that we need to offer our line managers and senior leaders as well, so that this could be a top-down approach. But where we've tried to sort of perhaps conjure up the momentum a bit for carers networking, you know, just something where staff members can come together as well and meet others in similar situations. That's been a little bit difficult to conjure up, and I just attribute that to it's a very difficult thing to talk about for a lot of people, and there's no sort of one size fits all or similar experience, because the sort of spectrum of it and the extremity of it can really differ, whether we're talking about a child or an elderly parent or a spouse, the financial impact that has. I think what everyone probably can unanimously agree on is it can really have a detrimental impact on well-being and mental health for the long term if that support's not there. So I don't sort of have the answer to these questions that I'm posing yet. We're still trying to understand this better ourselves, because we definitely want to offer this support. It might not always be able to be individually tailored to every single situation and sort of background, but we want to try and offer something that can provide reassurance to the majority that if they are going through this, and the reality is we'll be going through this at some point, whether now or in the future, that is just the harsh reality of things, that people know that that support's there and that flexibility can be facilitated. I would say that the pandemic, all the negatives of the pandemic, that the silver lining of it has been this sort of flexible hybrid working now, and people being able to sort of take their loved ones to appointments, or even just sit at their house if they needed to, and they've still been able to continue work. Because some of the criticism that, and not just at our organisation, just when I attended panel chats like this prior to the pandemic and met others from other employers, one criticism was, you know, I don't want to use my annual leave just for caring responsibilities, because annual leave is meant to be for holiday and respite, and it's eaten up into that time sometimes where people felt they had to take a whole day off for it. So that's just some of the challenges we've noticed, and wanting to sort of overcome that so that we can provide our staff with that reassurance that we are, as you say, we do recognise it and we do see them, and we want to make sure we're putting something in place that you know helps and provides that support and is tangible, and is, you know, people don't just feel we're just doing it for the sake of it. They can see that this is purpose driven. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, some really good points there, and I know that Imperial College has made great progress in supporting their carers. Just one point that I wanted to pick up on, actually, that Emily made, and that was around the fact that, as Emily said herself, she's not a carer right now, but thinking about future carers. So I think in organisations, in teams where managers in particular are able to show that they're helping support and recognise their carers, even when somebody might be sort of 10 years away from that themselves, they know that when their time comes, or whether they're going to go through a difficult time, they know that this is the place they want to be, because they know that they are going to be supported when that time comes. So I think, you know, that's really important. It's just like a leadership, a family-friendly culture, creating that, I think, is really important. Let's move to Claire. Thanks for joining us, Claire.
No, pleasure, and thanks for your email yesterday, Helen. Sorry I didn't reply under the cosh, but didn't want to miss the session. I guess, yeah, I was just going to pick up on something that's been mentioned a couple of times, which and Emily's just touched about, which is flexibility. And I guess I suppose I actually think there is a challenge in terms of the disconnect between potentially a policy and then actually, I suppose, what is the reality for people? So obviously, without getting critical of obviously the change that's been made and the kind of new legislation that's come in around, you know, kind of a working week off in a kind of 12-month period, which is obviously positive and long overdue in many respects. But the reality of that is, if you're a carer, you're not going to book, well, you might book a day off, but to that unpredictability point that Alison, I think, talked about, you don't know when you're going to need that time off. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a kind of point around actually in practice, what do organisations do about that? And I obviously have heard what Emily said around, you know, kind of the post-COVID world, and does it, you know, it potentially allows flexibility. But I suppose there's then, yeah, maybe it does, but I suppose there's then for kind of HR teams, how do you actually, what do you do about that? because obviously HR people like policies. So how do you have a policy that is just flexibility, I suppose? And kind of how do you then, you know, kind of just manage that on a kind of day to day or in teams, etc., etc. So I guess that was the kind of the one I was going to just kind of draw out, is the kind of what do you do from a kind of policy perspective to kind of enable that kind of flexibility piece, knowing that unpredictability is key. And then I suppose the other piece is that then perhaps, although I don't have children, but I suppose, you know, the kind of is this kind of carers piece the next kind of maternity return, a kind of time bomb problem where people that have caring responsibilities, it impacts their careers, because actually they do let colleagues down at short notice to attend meeting, you know, they can't attend meetings because they need to go and look after X or Y person. I think it's an interesting one. I think the challenge for us as workplaces is how we ensure this, be it having caring responsibilities, doesn't have a detrimental impact on your career.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, and just picking up on your point about the policy side of things, I think a lot of it, because of the unpredictable nature, as we've all talked about, caring responsibilities, HR policies and any policies which say you're allowed X amount of days off aren't really helpful for many situations. I mean, sometimes they help when we can, you know, book certain days in, or if we know we've got hospital appointments, etc. But yes, it's that unpredictable nature. I would say the best way to help alleviate some of that is in the manager training and the manager coaching. So Ruth and I, I'm just smiling at Ruth because we just a couple of weeks ago we ran a session together for managers, getting them to think about the carers in their team and how they might be able to support their teams to be more family friendly. And one thing we did talk about was that flexible nature of almost giving that sort of the family first message, which is, you know, if you have got an emergency, whether it be as a parent or a carer, understand that you may have to, you know, rush off at the last minute, and thinking that through in terms of the impact on the team, and thinking about what things can you put in place. Obviously we can't always put everything in place, but to ensure that when somebody does need to drop off at the last minute, everything doesn't fall apart. So thinking about continuity of the team and thinking about how we can sort of work together to make sure that that person's responsibilities can be picked up at the last minute. So I think a lot of it is around team and manager processes really, and thinking ahead, what happens if and what happens when, and it's all part, I guess, of contingency planning. I don't know if any of the panel have got anything to add to that.
I think adding to what you just said, Helen, about the webinars that we've done together, a lot of it is exactly what you just said, but encouraging the leaders to do the basic age-old lead by example. Make it okay for you to do it, so it's okay for your staff to do what they need to do, knowing that they're safe. And for those members of the team who may think that, well, you know, this person's getting all this time off and I'm picking up all the slack, yes, there's bound to be a little bit of resentment there. But if we manage that whole thing, that team as a more conducive and more cohesive group, then they know, the person who's not got responsibilities knows, as Helen alluded to before, that when their time does come, they know that they're in a safe place. They're not going to lose their job because they have to go off and care for somebody at the drop of a hat. They know that they've got that safety and that security. So it's about fostering a safe environment where people know that they can be themselves, be what they need to be for their families.
And I would add, it's about ultimately the culture of the organisation, which then filters down into the culture of the team. So if you've got a culture of trust and a culture of responsibility and a culture of open and honest conversations, it's much easier to have that conversation and navigate it with individuals, because you know the context and the environment that you're working in.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember, if you're supporting your carers, you're also supporting the team. So it's creating that awareness, and actually that's the benefit of the organisation as well. You're more likely to keep your staff. A lot of carers leave work because of the position they're in and the lack of time. So you'll end up with a productive and energized, motivated team as well.
Yeah, thank you. Just going to, we're going to go over to the next questions in a sec, but just picking up on one other point that Claire made as well. And I think that's around this sort of, is it the next thing? Is it the next time bomb? And I think it is, you know, I think this is something that is going to have a long-term effect, because we are, certainly people of our age, and I'm talking about me and the panel members, you know, we are in this sandwich generation. So, and this is going to become worse. You know, we are in an aging society. People are retiring much later because they can't afford to retire early anymore, which means that, you know, we are going to have increasing caring responsibilities. So whilst, you know, maternity coaching and supporting people through that maternity transition obviously still is important, it was massive, you know, from 10, maybe even 20 years ago, but definitely this is something I think that is only going to get worse. So I think the more we can do right now to help the carers and get these things in place, I think the better it will be. I'm just going to go to Charlie, because Charlie's, you've had your hand up a while, Charlie. So before we move on to the next question, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I think it's so fabulous you're having this conversation. So just want to commend everybody for that. And yeah, I was just a couple of things I wanted to emphasize was, first of all, just about the number of appointments and medical and therapeutic kind of appointments that carers, and particularly parent carers, might have to go to. It is often immense. And I don't know how much that often is perhaps understood or appreciated by employees. So I just really kind of wanted to highlight that. And the other thing is, you know, understandably in these situations, the focus is generally on the person with the disability, or, you know, who's had the diagnosis. And so for the carer, you know, their experience is often overlooked and ignored, both when they're caring and also when they're working. And you've mentioned trauma, and often I think the experience of trauma for carers is ongoing. Unfortunately, it is often cumulative and building during this experience. And I think that's also really important for employers to have some kind of awareness of it, that it's not a one-time event which we then recover from. This is often ongoing and cumulative too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlie. Definitely, you know, it is something that doesn't just go away, is it? You know, it can stay with us for the long time, and it can also have an impact on everyone else around us as well, you know, family members and also your professional team. Thank you. So let's move on to the next question now, which we're going to, because we've already started to cover some of these issues. So the next question is around what is the impact of these challenges? So we've started to talk about some of these, but what I'm interested in thinking about is both on the personal level, which I think we've alluded to quite a lot so far. So I guess what we haven't we started to cover it, but more on the professional side, you know, so what are if we don't support these challenges that carers go through personally and professionally, you know, ultimately long term, what is going to be the impact? So perhaps Ruth, could you share your thoughts? We'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of this has come out of the people that we've coached, the groups and individuals as well. And from personal experiences. All of the personal impacts obviously will fall out into work. It's just what happens. It's no longer that cut and dry. I'm at home, I'm at work. We don't work like that anymore. Society has changed. So everything overspills, the tiredness overspills, poor mental health will impact work. Productivity can be lower. Physical health can drop as a result of it all as well, because we're not looking after ourselves as much as we're looking after other people and working. So it can result in lack of concentration, focus, communication can begin to break down within work and at home. But looking at it from a professional point of view, communication can break down purely through tiredness. And sometimes thinking we've done something and we haven't. And as Helen just said, I mean, the age of the panel here, there's an awful lot of things going on in our own brains physiologically at this sort of age that means that we think we've done something and we haven't. Because we thought about it, it's like, oh, well, I've done that, I've ticked that box, and actually we haven't. And that can happen in the workplace as well. So all of that lowered productivity and thinking we've done something or we've not, or we forget to go to a meeting, wherever we are in our headspace, it can lead to individual and lowered individual and team morale, our fears of not being enough, insecurities around whether we can still do our role or not. Can we actually manage this as well as caring for somebody? We might not want to talk about it because we might not want to, or we might feel that we're going to have our role threatened. We question what our place is in the organisation, and which all of this all just goes back in that circle back to to leading to poor mental health. And of course, as a result of that, companies are likely to lose really good people when this is just for a short period of time. So if companies actually support and offer things that we'll talk about next, then they're less likely to lose the staff, they're more likely to have great staff retention, which of course saves them money, bottom line, isn't it? So, but yeah, with the personal things, something else we've not touched on is the impact it has on our families if we're caring for somebody and working full time. It's not just our immediate family who we live with. It could be our brother or sister, whoever else has the responsibility or shared responsibility of caring for that person, or at least an interest in caring for that person. They might be remote and not able to actually be there physically. But if there are things to discuss, such as what do we do if we need to put mother, father, sister, brother, whoever into care, how do we do that? What do we do with the finances? How do we manage this? Who has power of attorney? All of those things impact personally and can lead to family breakdown as well. So it's really everywhere. So I'm really glad we're talking about this as well, because it really does need to be discussed.
Thank you, Ruth. Any more thoughts from Alison and Georgina?
Yeah, sorry, ladies, I really got off on that one.
No, and
It's brilliant.
That's what we're here for, Ruth.
very well done. No, I'm not sure that I can. I think I've just wholeheartedly endorsed what you say, Ruth.
Yeah. I think the tiredness at work, possibly the stress, leads to more reactivity, which then fuels drama. I don't think I've worked with any organisation that doesn't have some kind of drama in their organisation, but it all just fuels that cycle of you, as you've been talking about. And that sort of, when you're emotionally drained, it's harder work to connect with others. So you start to disconnect and you start to withdraw, and then it leads to the isolation and loneliness. So everything is this self-fulfilling thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It keeps going.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's really quite scary. I mean, I think we've sort of alluded to how one thing affects another, and then, you know, it can lead to that spiraling effect. But, you know, since I've been looking into this over the past couple of years and talking to lots of people personally and professionally, you know, I've heard what could be described as horror stories of things that can go wrong. I've heard of people who have, due to not being able to work properly, and either leaving work or trying to run things, you know, in their own businesses and not being able to do it. So not being able to keep afloat. So massive impact on finances, you know, and financial health is obviously massive. So there's that side of it. And I've had people who I've spoken to who have become clinically depressed as a result of everything they've gone through. And then, of course, that, you know, goes in that sort of the one thing leads then to another, doesn't it? And yeah, it's been horrible, actually. Some of the impacts that I've heard, truly horrible. And I think we have all got that responsibilities, not just for each other as personally, but, you know, in our colleagues, in our teams at work, to look out for people who are going through all of these things.
And support them, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think with the resilience piece is so we tend to have resilient strategies that we put in place to keep us sort of balance that stress and recovery. And what I've noticed when you go through these experiences is the practices that you've used in the past no longer are quite serving you in the way they need to serve you now, but you don't have the energy necessarily to find the new practices, or you need to do something quite radically different. So a client was like, running was always his thing, and then when he was in that sandwich generation of young kids and caring for parents, and he said he was running and like bawling his eyes out at the same time, and that's when he realized that maybe the running wasn't the thing that was going to solve this, and actually he had to find some other strategies to support his mental health.
William, I know you've got your hand up. Great to have you.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Thanks for doing this, guys. It's a really interesting session. I'm a carer myself for 2 children, and I'm co-chair of the Carers Network at the BBC, together with Nadia, who's also on this call, I think. And one thing, just picking up on, I mean, a lot of what you've said is like quite accurate, but then the way it sort of feeds through. So some of these things that you were just talking about, like feelings of guilt and insecurity and things like that, and also the masking that you were talking about, is one thing that a lot of our kind of members of our network talk about, is sort of having to always be appearing to be kind of on it. And so, for example, somebody said recently, you know, I never take a lunch break because I have to always appear like, you know, I've got my shit together. And because the great fear is that we might appear, I guess, flaky or unreliable. And so that actually leads to sort of overwork sometimes. I'm sure that a lot of our network members actually work more than other people, because they're very worried about keeping up appearances. But also it's, I think, about building like brownie points. So because you're working on that relationship with your boss or whoever it is, and you sort of think you never know when you might need their support in the future. And so you're trying to build up a store of brownie points. And so that, I think that comes through, and obviously that cycles back to, you know, potential for burnout and things like that. The other thing I was going to say was, and I'm sure that Helen was about to move on to this, is that, you know, there are positives as well. And there are lots of skills that are transferable from, you know, the work that we do as carers at home to the work we do in the office. And I guess part of what coaching is about is to sort of help people see those transferable skills and to try and unlock, you know, that potential at the work. There is and Helen, when Helen came and talked to our carers, she was talking about that quite a lot. There is a lot there. There is a lot of positive. Sometimes you sort of, you know, I often, you know, tell our own network, tell our own members, you know, you guys are great, you know, and our kind of low self-esteem isn't actually reflected in what people actually think about us. So yeah, that's my 2 pence.
Thank you, William. That's really helpful. And I'm so glad that you referred to that transferable skills, because absolutely, as we sort of move on to this third part now around, you know, what can we do? You've just given us as a great example, because the webinar and the network event that we did for you was very much around recognizing people's desire, of course, to maintain their professional credibility in their image, and how the threat of overworking is very apparent, because people do want to make up for lost time. So if you have had to dip out and you know, spend a couple of hours going to an appointment or a meeting with social services or the NHS or whatever that might be, you're then wanting to think, oh, I really need to catch up, I don't want to let the team down. So yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that we have definitely learned, and it is around trying to make managers and organisations more aware of some of the positives that carers bring. So yes, absolutely. Let's think about some of the positives. Ruth, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that transferable skills, because of some of the workshops that we've done together for carers networks and for people who are carers in organisations.
Yeah, it's something that, as you say, William, when you start looking at actually what these transferable skills are, and I know Helen probably went through them all with your group, there are so many, and it's a really nice light at the end of the tunnel, if you like.